Let's go now to defence, because the last thing you want in defence is all talk and no action, but that seems to be a bit of the reality. Concerns, of course, over AUKUS. We haven't seriously begun to upgrade the Sterling submarine base in WA that's meant to host, of course, nuclear subs in under 4 years. We haven't started building the missile factory that's been announced again and again and again. Someone who wrote about this today in The Australian is the foreign editor of the paper, Greg Sheridan, who joins me now. You said today, Greg, that Richard Marles must already be judged as a failure as Defence Minister. He tried to get more money for defence and failed. You think the things more broadly in that portfolio are in shocking disarray. Strong words. Explain why you take the view.
Well, Peter, great to be with you. Look, you've just got to look at the facts. You know, my columns now, they're very straightforward and empirical. I pay on results. So what are the facts? The government is spending a little bit less money than the Morrison government promised across the forward estimates, but it's got a great big new commitment of money to the AUKUS subs. Absolutely nothing is happening on any element of the AUKUS agreement. It's 2 years old now. We've got not a single weapon or weapons system or weapons technology or anything that's come out of Tier 2. As for the subs themselves, the enabling legislation in the US is held up in Congress. There's no sign it's going to get through anytime soon. And we haven't done a thing to get moving on it. In the meantime, we've ripped all the money out of ongoing programs in defence, and they are all in catastrophic disarray. The Defence Strategic Review, it turned out, didn't give us a new direction, didn't make any decisions. It probably did in its original report, but the government published a very censored report because the government has decided it's not going to spend an extra dollar. Now, I understand that Richard Marles did make a bid to get some more money from the Expenditure Review Committee and was rebuffed, reflecting his weakness in the cabinet. So it's a simple logical thing. You can't spend a great squad of new money on AUKUS submarines without chewing up your old money. And in the meantime, we spend our money unbelievably inefficiently, you know, billions of dollars on French submarines that never came to pass and so on. And we have no capabilities. So Rowan Moffat, a former admiral, wrote over the weekend that our Navy, our surface fleet, is older, tighter, less reliable, less potent, less effective than it was a generation ago. And yet the government tells us we've got the most dangerous strategic circumstances we've had in 80 years. Well, this is, I think this is all PR. It's exactly what they accused the Morrison government of. All announcement, no substance.
All right, let's go to that strategic concern, because chief amongst the nations involved, of course, is China. Concerns about China's property sector collapsing. That would have huge consequences for its debt markets and financial system. We know the unemployment rate for young Chinese, 16 to 24 in urban areas, is now over 21%. That's catastrophic for trying to keep social harmony. You've got the recent removal of the foreign minister, now, of course, the defence minister in recent days. Our PM's due to visit Beijing very soon. There's talk of a meeting of sorts between President Biden and Xi Jinping in November. We don't know where that meeting might be, but I have to say, are we sending the wrong signal by going to meet with Xi on Chinese soil? Should we perhaps do it at a neutral venue? What do you think, Greg?
Well, Peter, that's a very important question. Let me just add a final footnote on the defence stuff. The other thing is Marles has announced now he's not going to reply to the surface fleet review until next year. So that means we'll be 2 years into the Albanese government before we get a single decision on our Navy surface fleet. And that I think is the government just running up the white flag of surrender on defence policy. On China, look, I think it's reasonable for Albanese to go to China to meet the president. But what should be the dominant international story today is that Xi Jinping has just sacked his foreign minister, just sacked his defence minister, just sacked the two leaders of the rocket forces, which is his nuclear force. He sacked a whole lot of other people at the top of the military establishment. If Albanese had just sacked Richard Marles and Penny Wong, the government would be in crisis, our nation would be in convulsions, and you'd think the government was finished. Now, Xi Jinping is also now not going to international summits. He's very unpredictable. He didn't give his speech in South Africa. He didn't show up to India. This is starting to look to me like late era Mao, late era Brezhnev, late era autocrat, crazy dictator syndrome. Whereas the whole point of the Chinese system is stability. Now you're getting this weird instability at the top of the Chinese government. And the truth is, no one in Western governments has the faintest idea what's really going on. I think out of all of that, it's perfectly okay for Albanese to go there and talk to him. We want to have a dialogue. But this sort of happy-clappy nonsense that you get from the head of the universities in Australia who said, you know, we mustn't demonise China. I mean, give me a break. We got the second strongest military and economic power in the world. We have no idea whether the defence minister is in jail or on charges or still has any influence. And I tell you what, it's not people demonising China. It's a very dangerous instability at the top of Chinese life right now.
Hey, just quickly before we go, I was reading comments overnight from Keir Starmer, Labor leader, of course, in the UK, odds-on favourite to be the next Prime Minister. Is he trying to backdoor Brexit? There's a suggestion that he's going to, if elected, make the UK an associate member, whatever that means, of the EU.
It's a bit hard to make a judgment on this because Keir Starmer is a pretty canny guy and his statements have had a marvellous element of ambiguity about them. He wants a closer agreement, and there's nothing wrong with that as an aspiration. I mean, the agreement was so nasty and difficult and limited because the European Union wanted to punish Britain for having the temerity to vote for Brexit. So as long as he accepts that he's not joining the customs union, he's not rejoining the EU in any way, seeking a closer trade agreement is okay, but I mean, it all remains to be seen.
All right, we'll leave it there. Greg Sheridan, thank you as always.